Mafia boss sheltered a bleeding poor girl during a storm, not knowing he just saved her from her abusive ex. Rain hit the coastal road like bullets from the sky. She was running barefoot on asphalt, blood washing down her temple, dress torn at the shoulder, each breath a knife between her ribs. Headlights cut through the storm behind her, getting closer. She veered into the trees, ran blind until her legs gave out at the base of a wrought iron gate she couldn't see the top of. A camera swiveled. An intercom crackled. A voice came through, low, calm, dangerous. "You're bleeding on my property. Who did this to you?" She couldn't answer. The headlights were scanning the tree line. The gate opened. A bleeding woman just collapsed at the gate of the most dangerous man in Savannah, and the headlights behind her belong to someone who will burn this city to drag her back. Subscribe and stay, because what happens behind this gate changes everything. 3 hours earlier, Alara Sinclair had been sitting on the bathroom floor of a waterfront townhouse, pressing a washcloth to the gash above her hairline. Imported tile, gold faucets, her blood in the sink. It usually was. Creed Holloway stood in the doorway, adjusting his cufflinks. The same hands that had slammed her head into the counter were now threading platinum through French cuffs, like they'd done nothing more strenuous than sign a document. "The Carmichael fundraiser starts at 8. I'll be back by 11. Clean this up." He checked his reflection. "And Alara, if that counter still has blood on it when I return, tonight will feel like a warm-up." The door closed. The electronic deadbolt engaged, that digital chirp that had become the sound of her burial. Creed Holloway, son of Judge Garland Holloway, rising star in the district attorney's office. The man every donor wanted at their table and every socialite wanted on their arm. A smile that made courtrooms trust him and hands that made Alara pray for unconsciousness. 2 years of captivity so precise it would impress an architect. Her phone monitored, her bank account controlled, her contacts erased one by one until the only person who knew she existed was the man destroying her. She'd aged out of foster care at 18 with nothing but a GED and the understanding that nobody was coming. Creed found her at a diner, swept her in with attention that felt like sunlight when you'd never had any, made her dependent, then made her disappear so gradually she didn't realize she was gone until every exit was sealed. Tonight the storm gave her a window. Power went out at 7:42. The electronic lock reset for 3 seconds. Alara heard the click, the tiniest mechanical exhale she'd waited 2 years to hear. She didn't grab shoes, didn't grab a phone, was through the door in 2 seconds. Rain hit her like a wall. She ran barefoot, no direction, no destination, just the animal understanding that stopping meant going back, and going back meant not surviving this time. 9 blocks before headlights appeared, Creed's black Escalade cutting through flooded streets. He'd gotten the door alert and left the fundraiser before the first speech ended. His property had escaped. That road led her to the gate. The gate belonged to Cale Mancini, in public. Shipping logistics, commercial real estate across the southeast. In private, the head of Savannah's oldest crime family. 36. The kind of man whose silence rearranged rooms. He controlled the ports, the unions, half the historic district. Feared not because he was loud, but because he was patient. A man who waited years to settle debts and never forgot the amount. Cale watched the security monitor from his office. A woman collapsed against his gate in a storm, ripping trees from the earth, bleeding, barefoot, and headlights scanning the road behind her like searchlights hunting an escaped prisoner. His head of security, a massive ex-Marine named Thresh, shook his head. Unknown contact, could be a setup. Cale watched her try to stand and fail, watched her fingers grip the iron bars like they were the last solid thing in the world. Open the gate, and if those headlights come within 500 feet of this property, kill them. Thresh didn't ask again. Alara crawled 3 feet through the gap before her body quit. The last thing she registered before darkness took her was a figure walking through the rain, tall, unhurried, draping a jacket over her shoulders before she could tell if the hands were kind or cruel. She woke hours later, clean sheets, rain still hammering windows, her torso wrapped in compression bandages, the gash above her hairline closed with careful strips. A woman sat nearby, calm, professional. "I'm Dr. Adeora. Fractured orbital bone, 3 cracked ribs, a laceration that needed 12 strips. The bruising on your back is extensive." She paused. "You're safe. That's all you need to know right now." Through the half-open door, Alara saw a hallway, a man standing at the far end speaking to Thresh. He didn't enter the room, didn't crowd the doorway. He glanced in once, dark eyes, a jaw tight with controlled fury, set a glass of water on the table nearest to her, and walked away without a word. Space, distance, silence. The opposite of everything she'd known for 2 years. Alara drank the water with shaking hands, set the glass down, and noticed something that cracked her chest open in a way that had nothing to do with the fractures. The door to her room was open, and nobody was standing in front of it. Alara tested the door 3 times before she believed it. Opened it, closed it, opened it again. 2 years of locked doors had rewired her brain to treat freedom as a malfunction, something that would correct itself the moment she trusted it. She walked through the estate like a woman crossing a minefield, every hallway a potential trap, every closed door a potential cage. She found Kale in the kitchen, not a formal dining room, the actual kitchen. He was making coffee. He set a cup in front of her without asking how she took it. Black. She wrapped both hands around it like it was the first warm thing she'd touched in months. He didn't interrogate her, didn't demand her story. He leaned against the counter and said one thing. "Whoever did that to your face is going to come looking for you. I need to know what I'm dealing with, whenever you're ready." Alara wasn't ready that day. She ate what Dr. Adeora brought her, slept again, woke to the sound of rain fading and the silence of a house where nobody was tracking her movements or timing her breathing. On the second day she talked. She told him about Creed, the DA's son, the judge's golden boy, the man who controlled every narrative in Savannah and would spin her disappearance into whatever story served him. Runaway girlfriend with mental health issues, unstable woman off her medication, a tragic case of a troubled girl nobody could save. Kale listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked one question. "Does he know where you are?" "No, but he'll find out. He always finds out." She was right. By the second day, Creed Holloway had mobilized everything. His father, Judge Holloway, fast-tracked a missing persons report. Creed held a press conference, hair disheveled, eyes manufactured red, the devoted boyfriend begging for his fragile girlfriend's safe return. The performance was immaculate. Kale watched the broadcast beside Alara. She was trembling, not from cold, but from the experience of watching your abuser rewrite reality on television while you sit bandaged in a stranger's house, knowing nobody will believe your version over his. "He's building a cage out of cameras," Kale said quietly. "If you come forward now, you're the unstable girlfriend. If you stay hidden, he plays the grieving partner. He always wins." Men who believe they always win stop watching their blind spots. That's not strength. That's a target. Meanwhile, Kale's people excavated Creed Holloway's life, layer by layer. What surfaced went far deeper than a man who hid his girlfriend. Creed had been running a shadow operation through the DA's office, using sealed case files to blackmail Savannah's wealthiest citizens. Business owners, developers, politicians, anyone who'd ever had a charge buried or a case quietly dismissed. He held the receipts and collected monthly. Judge Holloway wasn't just aware, he was the architect. Father and son had been running Savannah's elite like a protection racket disguised as justice. But the discovery that changed everything was personal. 3 women before Alara. Same pattern. Isolated, controlled, erased. The first relocated to another state and refused to speak about it. The second was committed to a psychiatric facility on testimony provided by Creed and his father. The third, a woman named Yara Bishop, disappeared 2 years ago. Missing persons case went cold within months, filed and buried by Creed's own office. Cale sat with Yara Bishop's file for a long time. The implications arranged themselves in silence. During those days, Alara began noticing things about Cale she tried not to catalog. The coffee that appeared every morning before she reached the kitchen, always black, always the right temperature, as if he'd been listening for her footsteps and timing the pour. Clean clothes left outside her door each night, her size, comfortable, chosen with the kind of attention that meant someone had actually looked at her and seen a person instead of a problem to manage. The way he checked with Dr. Adeora about her recovery every evening, but never asked Alara directly, giving her the dignity of healing without being treated like a patient under observation. She caught herself listening for his footsteps in the hallway, not with fear, the way she'd listened for Creed's, with something else entirely. Something she didn't have a name for yet, and wasn't ready to examine because the last time she'd trusted what she felt about a man, it had cost her everything. But Cale never pushed, never lingered too long, never entered a room she was in without making sure she heard him coming first. He gave her the one thing Creed had spent 2 years systematically destroying, the ability to choose when to be seen. On the fourth evening, the storm had finally broken. Golden light poured through the estate's windows for the first time since Alara arrived. She found Cale in his study, a room lined with books she hadn't expected and photographs she hadn't been invited to ask about. He was sitting behind his desk with a folder open and an expression she hadn't seen before. Not calculated, not controlled, something colder. The face of a man staring at evidence of something unforgivable. He looked up when she entered, studied her for a moment, the way he always did, like he was measuring whether she was ready for what came next. Then he slid a photograph across the desk. A woman, mid-20s, dark hair, kind eyes. The photograph looked like it had been pulled from a social media profile that no longer existed. "Do you recognize her?" Alara's face drained of color. Her hand went to the edge of the desk to steady herself. "Yara," she whispered. "Yara Bishop. She was before me." Creed mentioned her once, early on before he stopped pretending to be human. He said she left him, said she was unstable, said she couldn't handle the pressure of being with someone like him. "She didn't leave him, Alara." Cale's voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that precedes something devastating. "She's been missing for 2 years. Her last phone signal pinged near a property owned by Judge Holloway outside the city, a hunting lodge on 60 acres of marshland." He paused. "My people found her, not in the marsh, in a private psychiatric facility in rural Georgia, committed under a false name, papers signed by Judge Holloway himself. She's been held there for 2 years, sedated, isolated, erased from every record that matters." The room tilted. Alara gripped the desk with both hands. "She's alive?" "She's alive. Barely. 2 years of forced medication and solitary confinement. But alive." The weight of it crashed through Alara's chest. The man she'd shared a bed with, the man who'd kissed her forehead on Sunday mornings and then split her lip on Monday nights, hadn't just hurt women. He'd buried them. Not in the ground, in a system designed to make them disappear while their hearts kept beating. Yara Bishop had been screaming into silence for 2 years, and nobody heard her, because the men who locked her away were the same men the city trusted to deliver justice. "That was his plan for me," Alara said, not a question. "Yes." She looked at Yara's photograph for a long time. Then she looked at Cale. "Get her out." "Already done. My people extracted her this morning. She's safe." Alara's eyes burned. "Then we end him. Not quietly, not in the shadows. I want every person who ever shook his hand to see exactly what he is." Cale held her gaze. "Then we give them a show Savannah will never forget." Cale's people spent the next 48 hours building a case designed to detonate on impact. Every sealed file Creed had used for blackmail, documented. Every wire transfer connecting the Holloway family to the psychiatric facility, traced. Yara Bishop's false commitment papers with Judge Holloway's signature, verified by 3 independent analysts. Medical records showing 2 years of forced sedation, cataloged. Dr. Adeora's documentation of Alara's injuries, time-stamped and photographed the night she arrived. The target was the governor's reception at the Mercer Ballroom. 300 of Savannah's most powerful people. Full media coverage. The Holloway family being honored for 3 decades of commitment to justice, an award they'd campaigned for and paid for through the same network of favors and blackmail that kept their empire running. Cale's tech team loaded everything into the ballroom's AV system through the venue's head of event production, a man whose son had been facing drug charges that Creed's office had been using as leverage for 2 years. When Cale's people showed him the evidence of what the Holloways had done, he didn't just cooperate, he volunteered. Creed called Cale on the morning of the reception. Polite, controlled. The voice of a man who still believed he was the most dangerous person in any conversation. "I believe you have something of mine, Mr. Mancini." "Something of yours?" "Alara is unwell. She needs professional help. Her doctors are concerned." "Her doctors? The same ones who've been keeping Yara Bishop sedated under a false name for 2 years?" Silence. The kind that tells you a man just heard his own empire cracking beneath his feet. "I'd be very careful, Mancini. I don't make threats, Holloway. I make plans. Here's one. Tonight you stand on a stage and accept an award for justice. Bring your best smile. You'll need it." He hung up, turned to Alara. "He knows something is coming. He'll try to control it. Men like him always do. Let him try." The evening arrived. Alara stood in a room at Cale's estate staring at the gown hanging on the door. Simple, black, elegant. Not a costume. Armor. Her hands trembled, not from fear of Creed, from the weight of becoming visible after 2 years of being systematically erased. A knock. Cale in the doorway, dark suit, no tie. Second thoughts? Terrified thoughts. What if I freeze? What if I see him and become the girl on the bathroom floor again? Cale crossed the room, stood close enough for her to feel his presence, but didn't touch her. Not yet. "Then you look at me. I'll be beside you the entire time. And you remember, you ran barefoot through a hurricane with 3 cracked ribs. The woman who did that doesn't freeze." She held his gaze. Something passed between them that neither named. The same current that had been building since a glass of water left on a table and a door left deliberately open. "I'm ready." They arrived at the Mercer Ballroom in a black car that drew the kind of attention Cale normally avoided. He stepped out first, offered his hand. Alara took it. Cameras flashed from the press line and the light hit her like a wall, but she didn't look away. Inside, 300 guests in designer formal wear. Champagne, string quartet. The machinery of wealth celebrating itself. The Holloway family held court near the stage. Judge Holloway shaking hands with the governor, Creed beside him, radiating the manufactured warmth of a man who'd practiced sincerity in the mirror until it looked real. Then Creed saw her. Alara walking through the ballroom entrance on the arm of Cale Mancini. The woman he'd locked in a townhouse and beaten into silence. Alive, visible, wearing the kind of composure he'd spent 2 years trying to destroy. The color left his face in stages. His champagne glass trembled. He steadied it, reassembled his expression. But his eyes, those couldn't be fixed. They held the wild calculation of a man watching a ghost walk toward him in a room full of witnesses. Then he saw who was walking behind them. Yara Bishop. Thin, pale, but standing, breathing, present. The woman he'd erased from existence 2 years ago, walking into his tribute dinner on her own 2 feet. Creed's glass hit the marble floor. The sound cut through the ballroom like a crack in the earth. Judge Holloway turned, saw Yara. His composure didn't crack, it vaporized. 3 decades of judicial authority couldn't produce a single expression to cover what was happening on his face. Creed crossed the floor in seconds. His smile assembled for the cameras, but his voice came out low enough for only Alara and Kale to hear. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're making a mistake you won't recover from. Alara's voice carried, clear, steady, loud enough for the nearest 50 people. The mistake was yours, Creed. Every single one of them. You're embarrassing yourself. You're unwell. Everyone here knows. Everyone here is about to know everything. She didn't blink. About Yara, about the facility, about the blackmail files, about every woman you've ever broken and buried. Creed's mask slipped, just a fraction, but enough. The people closest to them saw it, the flash of something feral behind the polished exterior, the real man surfacing for half a second before the performance could seal him back in. He turned to Kale. You have no idea what you've started. Kale's expression didn't change. I know exactly what I've started. The question is whether you know what's about to finish. Creed opened his mouth to respond. Then the ballroom screens flickered. His head turned. Judge Holloway's head turned. 300 pairs of eyes lifted toward the light. Alara felt Kale's hand find hers. Not for the cameras. Not for performance. His fingers laced through hers and held on. Steady, warm, certain. She squeezed back and watched the screens come alive. The screens displayed everything. Commitment papers bearing Judge Holloway's signature, the false name, the fabricated diagnosis, the authorization that locked Yara Bishop inside a facility where nobody knew she existed. Medical records showing 2 years of forced sedation, dosages high enough to erase a person's identity while keeping their heart beating. Wire transfers connecting the Holloway family to the facility through 3 shell companies. Then the blackmail operation. Sealed case files used as leverage. Monthly payments from Savannah's wealthiest citizens traced through accounts Judge Holloway had been managing for a decade. Photographs of Alara's injuries documented by Dr. Adeora the night she arrived at Kale's estate. The fractured orbital bone, the cracked ribs, the belt marks layered across her back in patterns that made 300 people in formal wear physically recoil. And standing in the center of the ballroom, Yara Bishop. Alive, thin, trembling slightly, but present, undeniable. The woman the Holloways had erased from existence, breathing proof that everything on those screens was real. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then the ballroom detonated. Cameras flashed from every direction, phones rose. A reporter near the stage pushed forward, live streaming to thousands. Judge Holloway, did you sign false commitment papers to imprison a woman in a psychiatric facility for 2 years? Judge Holloway reached for the authority that had protected him for 3 decades. This is a coordinated attack, fabricated evidence designed to... The commitment papers have your signature, the reporter cut in. The facility has confirmed the patient. Are you denying? My lawyers will address every... Judge Holloway, the patient is standing right there. 300 heads turned to Yara. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her existence in that room was louder than anything the Holloways could say. 2 years of forced silence, standing upright in a ballroom full of the people who'd celebrated the men who locked her away. Creed's composure collapsed entirely. He turned to Alara, mask gone, the real man fully exposed in front of every camera in the room. You're nothing. You were nothing when I found you, and you're nothing now. A foster kid from nowhere who should be grateful. Grateful. Alara's voice carried across the silent ballroom. She didn't shout. Didn't need to. You locked a woman in a facility for 2 years because she tried to leave you. You beat me unconscious on a Tuesday night and went to a fundraiser. You used your father's courtroom to blackmail half this city. She held his gaze. And you're telling me to be grateful. Creed lunged forward. Kale's hand caught his chest, one palm, flat, immovable. The most powerful man in Savannah's underworld, stopping the DA's golden boy with the same effort it took to close a door. Careful, Kale said quietly. Every camera in this room is pointed at you, and you've already given them enough. Security arrived, not to protect the Holloways, to escort them out. Federal agents waited in the lobby, charges spanning 2 jurisdictions. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, blackmail, fraud, obstruction of justice. The Holloway name, 2 generations of manufactured respectability, collapsed in under 15 minutes while Savannah's elite recorded every second. Creed passed within arm's reach of Alara on his way out. He stopped, not with rage anymore, with the hollowed expression of a man watching the life he constructed disintegrate, while the woman he thought he'd broken stood untouched at the center of the wreckage. Alara held his eyes, steady, unafraid. 2 years of flinching ended in this ballroom, on this night, in front of these people. Creed looked away first. That moment, him breaking eye contact before she did, erased 2 years of conditioning in a single breath. Months later, Savannah in autumn, Spanish moss catching golden light, the historic district moving at its usual pace, unhurried, graceful, holding its secrets the way it always had. Except one secret was gone now. The Holloway machine had been dismantled so thoroughly that the name itself had become something people whispered instead of admired. Creed received 28 years, no deal. His father was disbarred and sentenced to 15. The courtroom footage showed Creed weeping as charges were read. The man who'd owned every narrative in Savannah finally trapped inside one he couldn't rewrite. Alara didn't watch the sentencing. She was painting a porch that day. A converted Victorian 3 blocks from the river, purchased at auction from the city's seized assets fund. The same system the Holloways had corrupted, now funding its own redemption. Alara gutted it, rebuilt it. 20 beds, a kitchen, a therapy center. Legal aid office staffed by attorneys who'd spent years watching the Holloways pervert the system and were now hungry to rebuild it. The sign above the door read Haven. She didn't name it. The first women who stayed there did. Yara Bishop ran the intake program. 3 months of recovery, physical, psychological, reclaiming an identity that had been chemically dissolved for 2 years. She was quieter than she used to be, but she was present. She greeted every woman who walked through the door because she knew what it meant to be the person nobody comes for. And she refused to let anyone else feel that silence. Cale arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The tension that had lived in his frame for as long as anyone had known him, that permanent vigilance of a man who trusted nothing, was different now. Still present, but quieter. He'd restructured, pulled back from the parts of his world that required the version of himself he was tired of being. Still powerful, still respected, but choosing what to build instead of what to control. He sat on the porch steps beside Alara. She had paint on her hands and her hair tied back, and she looked nothing like the woman bleeding against his gate, and everything like the woman that version of her had been fighting to become. "You know when I knew?" she said. He looked at her. Not the ballroom, not the screens, not watching him fall apart. "When?" "The first night. You set a glass of water on the table while I was being treated. Didn't say a word. Didn't ask a single question. Just set it down and walked away." She looked at his hands. "My whole life, people only came close when they wanted something. You came close just to leave water and walk away. That told me everything about who you were before I ever learned your name." Cale took her hand. Paint-stained fingers laced through his. She held on the way a woman holds on when she's finally found something that doesn't require her to be less than what she is. He kissed her. On the porch steps of a house that smelled like fresh paint and second chances. No storm, no blood, no locked doors. Just 2 people who found each other on the worst night of one of their lives and chose, freely, without fear, to stay. Inside Haven, a woman was being shown to her room by Yara. She held a small bag and shook the way Alara used to shake. Yara touched her arm. "You're safe here. I know you don't believe that yet. That's okay. You will." Across town in a federal holding facility, Creed Holloway sat in a cell wearing orange instead of a tailored suit. The evening news played in the common room. The anchor smiled. And finally tonight, Haven House in Savannah's historic district has become the state's most recognized resource for survivors of domestic violence. Founded by Alara Sinclair, the woman whose courageous stand against one of the city's most powerful families shocked the nation, Haven has sheltered over 60 women in its first 4 months of operation. The camera showed Alara on the porch, paint on her hands, Kale beside her, both smiling the way people smile when they've survived something together and decided to build something from the wreckage. A guard changed the channel. Creed stared at the blank screen and lived with everything he lost because he mistook a woman with no family, no money, and no name for someone who would never fight back. She ran barefoot through a hurricane with nothing but her heartbeat. He opened a gate he had no reason to open. They thought she was finished. They thought she was invisible. They thought a girl from nowhere couldn't possibly matter enough to bring down an empire built on silence and fear. She mattered more than all of it. And the man who sheltered her from the storm spent the rest of his making sure she never had to run again. If you made it this far, you felt something, and we both know it. Hit subscribe and be part of what we're building. A place where stories don't just entertain. They remind you that the people the world counts out are usually the ones worth counting on. Drop a comment. Tell us what you'd name your haven. Share this with someone who needs to hear it tonight. We read every single one. See you in the next story.